This is the M2 MacBook Air, and it's okay. It's fine. Actually, it's very good if you're coming from any Intel-based MacBook Air or almost any Intel-based MacBook at all. This is the base model MacBook Air, and I've been using it for the last 2 weeks almost exclusively. I've used this laptop to do every one of my daily tasks and workload for my day job, and this computer has been able to keep up with me the whole time. I've also had the chance to test out my YouTube workflow on this machine, and despite a couple of issues, I was able to complete my tasks. So I want to tell you what it's like to actually use this laptop, and if you don't want to watch the whole video, I understand. I will say that this is a very capable laptop for what it is, and for a regular user, I think you will be very happy with it over the next few years. But let's start off with the design. This new MacBook Air is super sleek and nice and pretty. Apple brought their modern design language to the new Air, and it is amazing. Similar to the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, you now have the flat top and bottom with slightly rounded bottom corners. When this thing is closed and you carry it around, it feels ridiculously light and compact, even compared to the 14-inch MacBook Pro. It just doesn't feel heavy or bulky enough to be a relatively powerful and full-featured laptop. But it is. And even though it's this light, this thing is rock solid. Like, the standard Apple aluminum build plays really well here and feels as solid as any other Apple laptop. One thing I did notice is that because this thing is so slim, the easiest way to get it off of a flat surface using one hand is to just kind of get a finger underneath the back hinge area. You lift it a little bit and then you can pick it up and go. If you try and pick this thing up one-handed from the sides or the front, there's just nothing to grip onto. You just can't do it. So again, just finger on the back around the hinge. You should be able to pick it up and go. And going, I will be on a quick trip soon. So I am pretty excited to actually take this super light machine with me on that trip. Oh, and if you're wondering why I didn't get the midnight color, it's because silver is the best. It's just the best color. It's neutral, it's clean, modern, and, well, classic, I guess. I went through a space gray phase, but there's something about being 40 now, and silver just looks great. Also, you don't see fingerprints. Opening this thing up reveals one of the biggest changes to this new MacBook Air, which is the display. Well, and the notch. The bezels are not quite as thin as the 14-inch MacBook Pro, but they do look nice and uniform. The new 13.6-inch display is slightly bigger than the previous MacBook Air, but only in the vertical pixels right here, about 64 pixels worth up here where the notch is. That does not give you a lot more working space, but it just pushes the menu bar up a little bit. But it does change the overall look and feel of this device. It's just joyful to open up and look at this thing. Apple says that the new display gets up to 500 nits now compared to 400 on the M1 MacBook Air. But inside, in my office and in my house, I wasn't really able to see a brightness difference between the two displays. Inside the notch at the top of the display is that brand new 1080p camera, which in a side-by-side test with the previous MacBook Air, I don't really see much difference. Video from both cameras is kind of lacking in certain ways. They both just kind of suck, but differently from each other. But it does have a built-in webcam on a thin and light laptop, so it's okay. Now, if this will be your first Mac with a notch, you're probably thinking that it's gross or ugly, or maybe you hate it. But honestly, just like a notch on a phone or a hole punch out or whatever thing on a display, you just get used to it over time and it just fades away. It's probably rare for a user of this laptop to have so many things crowd up top in the menu bar where you might notice an issue with that notch, but I think for most people it's going to be a non-issue. But again, I promise you, as you use it, it just fades away in a day or two. Another big change for the new M2 Air is the speakers. Apple added a new 4-speaker system into the M2 Air, and they sound way better than the M1 Air. Even without the speaker grills and upward-facing speakers like the M1 Air, this has much better range than the M1 Air, and it's a lot easier to hear things like hi-hats and bass lines and rock music. To my ears, the speakers in the M2 Air may have slightly less volume than the previous Air, but it sounds a whole lot better overall. Of course, compared to the 14-inch MacBook Pro and its 6-speaker system, these do not touch it, but these are still better than nearly any other non-Mac laptop I've ever tried. The keyboard and trackpad have been given an upgrade as well, and I will say that I love Apple keyboards. I find that they just have the right feel and travel, and as one who switches a lot between Apple devices, I love that they all have a consistent feel and I do not have to adjust mentally when switching between devices. I can go from a MacBook Pro to a MacBook Air to the iPad Magic Keyboard and they all just feel the same, or even the desktop Magic Keyboard. They all just feel, like I said, the same travel, same overall dimensions. It just feels good to me. The function row on the keyboard has been expanded to full height keys, just like the MacBook Pros, and the trackpad is now the same size as the new 14-inch MacBook Pro. Although, I do like the sound of the click on the Air more than I do on the MacBook Pros. I think that Apple purposely gives the MacBook Pro a higher pitched sound like metal clinking together, but I prefer the dull thud sound of the Air. It's less distracting when you hit it thousands of times per day. When it comes to the ports, we still just get the 2 single Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports on the left-hand side, just like the M1 Air, along with a headphone jack on the right side. Then there's also the return of MagSafe on the MacBook Air line of devices, which is nice for people who need to connect multiple devices at the same time using the USB-C ports on the computer. So now you free up one of those extra ports and you can charge with a completely separate cable if that's what you want to do. I was a huge fan of MagSafe in older MacBooks, and I thought it was insane when Apple removed it. But nowadays, I'm usually plugged into my dock at my desk with my CalDigit TS4 and a display, so I really don't use MagSafe really at all. And if I travel, like I'm about to, I would rather not take an extra cable with me when I can just use a USB cable, USB-C cable, to charge my MacBook and my iPad. And yes, it does stink that there's just a one external display limit natively, but luckily for me, I only use a single external display. Okay, so now we need to cover the performance of these new machines and the, controversies. This is the base model M2 Air with 8 CPU cores, 8 GPU cores, 256 gigabytes of storage, and 8 gigabytes of memory. During the last 2 weeks, I've done all of my work on this machine, all my personal stuff, which involves surfing and shopping and watching videos, listening to music, going through photos, and everything else a normal person does with a computing device. And I've done all my YouTube stuff on here as well, including editing multicam 4K 422 10-bit footage. And during my regular work and personal use, I did not feel any slowdowns or lag, even with 15 to 20 Safari tabs, a few Brave tabs, mail, calendar, notes, work apps, and a few other things all running at the same time. I did, however, observe a high amount of swap memory being used with just those things going on, and there is a lot of read-writes happening to the SSD because there's just not enough physical memory. Sometimes websites spike and use a ton of resources that they shouldn't, and the computer has to swap memory to the SSD. But the computer is just doing its job and doing this in the background. And the only reason that I'm aware of this at all is because I went into Activity Monitor and checked. Now, when it comes to my video work, which is a lot more intense than it was when the original M1 came out, this computer had some issues. And in this test, I totally understand that this is not how most people will use this computer. Right now, I am doing basically everything I normally do with, browsing the web, checking messages, a little bit of work, but I am exporting a video right now, and I also have Pixelmator Pro open for editing thumbnails. And as you can see, the memory swap is going quite high. We're at over 6 gigabytes of memory swap right now. And the computer just does not want to function very well. So the lag in the cursor is like a first indicator. You click on Safari, and I already clicked, and it's just sitting there doing nothing, waiting to bring up Safari. So, this takes a long time. I don't know why I did a right click. Let me just click out here. Now click Safari again, and see if it actually comes up. There it goes. So Safari finally came up. As you can see, I probably have about, 15 tabs open, but just switching between tabs takes seconds to actually, switch over. So go to notifications on Twitter, and I just want to reply to this tweet right here about using the kit lens on the A7 IV. I hit the reply button. It took seconds to come up. And now as I type, there's delay on the keyboard. This is not ideal for sure. And yes, again, most people are not doing this with a MacBook Air, so I totally understand that what I'm doing is taxing this base model computer. But even without exporting video, the fact that so much virtual memory is being used for regular stuff that a normal person would do means to me that we are beyond the point where 8 gigabytes of memory is an acceptable baseline for a $1,200 computer. Along those same lines is the SSD performance, which, yes, is slower and lower on the base model compared to the base model M1. And yes, I have seen all of the videos proving how slow it is and how it affects system performance. I, in my personal use, did not notice any slowdowns in regular use of this computer. On one hand, I fully understand how people could be annoyed that a newer, more expensive device has a slower component in it, no matter which part it is. On the other hand, most people will not care, and if you do, don't buy it. It's not for you. But in my regular usage, I did not feel any slowdowns. The M2 chip inside is the second version of Apple Silicon for Mac, and Apple says it's up to 18% faster in CPU and up to 35% faster in GPU. Basic benchmark tests show nice increases in performance from the M1, but this did not translate at all in regular, real-world usage for me. Benchmarks and performance comparisons are subjective, and a lot of factors can change those results. So putting all of that aside for a moment, this computer just did not feel any faster compared to the M1 Air. And I know because I did a full wipe of my M1 Air and used Migration Assistant and transferred everything from the M2 Air to the M1 Air and used this computer for a full day after using this one for 2 weeks. And you know what? It felt and responded the exact same to me, which is to say, fine. The jump in performance that we got going from the Intel MacBook Airs to the Apple Silicon MacBook Airs was such a giant leap that this feels much less revolutionary and just simply evolutionary, which is okay. But that puts this laptop in a weird spot for me, and I'm not sure that I can recommend it. This machine sits in a weird spot at $1,200 and really is a hybrid between the M1 MacBook Air and the 14-inch MacBook Pro. The M2 Air gets the physical qualities of the 14-inch, like MagSafe, the better design, the bigger screen, but basically the performance of the M1 Air. In my opinion, you really need to either go higher or lower. You can get an M1 MacBook Air from the Apple Refurb store for $850 and get essentially the same performance. You can even get the M1 Air with 16 gigabytes of memory and a 512 gigabyte SSD for less than $1,200 if you still want to spend less and get a little more headroom. If you get the M2 with that same configuration, you're looking at $1,600, which is just $200 shy of a refurbished 14-inch MacBook Pro, which is better in almost every way. Heck, you can even get the 14-inch MacBook Pros cheaper sometimes, brand new, using the link in the description below. So if you want to save money, you really should consider the M1 MacBook Air. If you need more performance than the M1 can offer you, you should get the 14-inch Pro, because spending more on the M2 Air is not going to give you that extra performance that matters. If you need performance and can't afford the 14-inch yet, get the M1 Air and save some more money, then sell it and get the 14. But of course, none of this matters at all if you're like me and you just want the newest and best looking stuff. In that case, just get the M2 Air and you'll probably want to upgrade the memory and the storage. Overall, the M2 MacBook Air is a fine computer for computer things, and most people will be happy with it. But what do you guys think? Does this computer have what you want, or are you holding out for something else? Let me know below. If you're looking for a more in-depth comparison between this and the M1 MacBook Air, check out this video right over here. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.